This story is titled, Ex-Wife Demands My Life-Saving Cancer Treatment Money to Buy Her New Stepson a Sports Car. When I refused, she dragged me to court and regretted it. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey guys! I never thought I'd be here spilling my life story like this, but honestly, I need to get this off my chest. Not too long ago, 34 male, thought I had my life together. Nothing fancy, just a solid, middle-class setup. I had a steady job, a little house, and a family that I thought would stick by me no matter what. Turns out, I was way off. I was married to Ashley for almost 10 years. When we first met, she seemed like the whole package. Smart, funny, and knew what she wanted in life. She had this confidence about her that I couldn't resist. We got married after a couple of years, bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood, and thought we'd build a life together. A few years in, we had our daughter, Lily. She's 6 now, and honestly, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Being her dad is the one thing I know I've done right. Ashley and I weren't perfect, but I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, she could be demanding at times, but who isn't, right? I figured it was just normal married life stuff. Then, about a year ago, I started feeling off. I was tired all the time, like I couldn't shake this constant exhaustion. At first, I blamed work. I'd been putting in a lot of hours, trying to save up for Lily's future. But then I started losing weight and getting weird aches. Long story short, I ended up at the doctor's, and they hit me with the big C, cancer. Hearing that word felt like everything just froze. I barely remember what the doctor said after that. Something about treatments, survival rates, and how it wasn't going to be easy. I just sat there, numb. Ashley was with me, and I thought she'd be my rock through this. I mean, that's what marriage is about, right? Sticking together when life gets tough. That's what I thought. At first, she seemed supportive. She said all the right things. We'll get through this. You're strong, blah, blah, blah. But looking back, I think she was just going through the motions. She stopped asking questions about my appointments and started spending more time out of the house. I thought maybe she was just stressed. I mean, who wouldn't be? So I tried to give her space, thinking she'd come around. She didn't. One night, she sat me down and said, "I can't do this." Just like that. She said she wasn't cut out for a life with a sick husband. She wanted someone healthy, who could still provide for her and Lily. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there, stunned. She was calm. Too calm. Like she'd rehearsed it or something. Then she just let it all out. She wanted a divorce. Within weeks, she was gone. She took Lily, emptied our savings account, and left me with the house and the bills. The divorce process was brutal. She hired some big-shot lawyer who wiped the floor with me. I ended up losing almost everything. Our savings, joint accounts, and even had to pay $1,200 a month in child support. I didn't fight the child support because honestly, Lily's my world, and I'd do anything for her. But still, it felt like a punch to the gut. So there I was, sitting in an empty house trying to figure out how I was going to handle cancer treatments, pay child support, and keep the lights on. Ashley didn't care. She was off living her new life, like I didn't even exist anymore. And the worst part is, she didn't even try to hide her reasons. She told me flat out, I need a fresh start. I can't be tied down to this. Like I was some broken thing she needed to get rid of. Looking back, I realized there were warning signs. Ashley always had a way of making things about her. If I was sick with a cold, she'd complain about picking up the slack. If I worked late, she'd grumble about me not being around enough. But I loved her, so I brushed it off. I thought it was just how she was, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. After she left, I was stuck trying to figure out what to do next. I had cancer treatments to start, bills piling up, and no idea how I was going to make it all work. It felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. But one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going to let cancer or Ashley take me down without a fight. And that's where it all started. The first few weeks after the divorce were rough. Bills started piling up. Mortgage payments, utilities, medical expenses. My health insurance wasn't terrible, but the copays for chemo and other treatments added up fast. Plus, I still had to send Ashley the monthly child support, which was pretty much my entire paycheck after everything else. I tried not to think about how she'd taken all our savings and left me with nothing but this house. I started treatment not long after the divorce was finalized. Let me tell you, chemo is no joke. I thought I was tired before, but this was a whole new level of exhaustion. I'd come home from the hospital, collapse on the couch, and barely have the energy to move. Some days, even getting up to make a cup of tea felt like running a marathon. But I kept pushing through because I didn't have a choice. I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting to be there for Lily. Ashley, on the other hand, was living her best life. She remarried within a few months, which wasn't a huge surprise. She'd always been the type to move on quickly when things got tough. From what I heard, her new husband was loaded, which explained why she wasn't in any rush to get a job or contribute financially. She'd send me the occasional text about Lily, mostly to ask for extra money for essentials like new clothes or school supplies. But other than that, she was radio silent. At first, I tried to be civil. I didn't want to make things harder for Lily, and I figured Ashley would eventually come around and realize how unfair she'd been. But she didn't. Every time I tried to talk to her about splitting the costs for Lily's needs or, maybe giving me a break since I was literally fighting for my life, she'd shut me down. "You're her father," she'd say. "It's your responsibility." Like she hadn't just taken everything and left me in the dust. I didn't want to tell anyone what was going on. I was embarrassed, honestly. I felt like I'd failed, not just as a husband, but as a father. But one day, I was sitting at work, staring at my growing pile of medical bills, and my coworker Emma noticed something was up. She sat down next to me and asked if I was okay. I guess I must have looked pretty rough because I ended up spilling everything. The cancer, the divorce, the financial mess, everything. Emma listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, "We're going to figure this out. You're not alone in this." I didn't think much of it at the time, but a few days later, Emma and some of my other coworkers surprised me with an idea. They wanted to start a local fundraiser to help cover my medical expenses. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to feel like a charity case, and I wasn't sure how people would react. But they insisted, and honestly, I didn't have a better solution. So I let them go for it. They started small, organizing bake sales and yard sales to raise money. Then someone suggested setting up a GoFundMe page. Within days, the campaign started gaining traction. People I barely knew were donating and sharing my story on social media. My coworkers wrote updates about my battle with cancer, and they didn't hold back. They talked about how I was trying to stay strong for my daughter and how much I needed the community's support. It was overwhelming in the best way. I remember the day we hit $10,000. I sat in my living room and just broke down. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The donations kept coming, and before I knew it, we'd raised $30,000. It was more than I ever could have hoped for, and it gave me the chance to focus on my treatment without constantly worrying about how I was going to pay for it. I posted a video on the GoFundMe page to thank everyone who donated. I tried to hold it together, but I was so emotional I could barely get the words out. The support meant everything to me. It wasn't just the money. It was knowing that people cared, even when Ashley clearly didn't. Of course, Ashley found out about the fundraiser. At first, she didn't say anything, but I could feel the storm brewing. I should have known she wouldn't stay quiet for long. Things were starting to turn around. But Ashley ? She wasn't about to let me have that moment of peace. Of course, Ashley had to come along and ruin the moment. At first, it started with a random text. I remember it clear as day because I hadn't heard from her in weeks, except for the usual child support reminders, of course. This time, it was different. She wrote, "Hey, saw your fundraiser. Congrats on raising so much money. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone for a while, trying to figure out what she meant by, "Can we talk?" Knowing Ashley, it wasn't going to be a friendly chat. I ignored it, hoping she'd let it go. But nope. The next day, she called. I didn't answer, so she left a voicemail. In her usual entitled tone, she said, "We need to discuss how you're going to share some of that GoFundMe money. It's only fair, considering our daughter could use some of it too." I couldn't believe it. Share? With her? After she drained our savings and left me high and dry? I called her back, and it was one of the most frustrating conversations I've ever had. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it. She said her new stepson, she remarried super quick, had been wanting a sports car, and since I'd raised so much money, it was only fair to use some of it for him. I was dumbfounded. "This money is for my cancer treatment, Ashley," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's literally the only way I can afford to keep living." She responded, "You're still alive, aren't you? If you can pay for chemo, you can spare a little for the kids." The kids. She actually lumped her new stepson, who I've never even met, into the same category as Lily. I told her no. Flat out number. That money wasn't hers to touch. She didn't take it well. She called me selfish, accused me of using my cancer as a pity card, and then hung up on me. Ashley has never been the type to back down when she wants something. Over the next few weeks, she bombarded me with calls and texts. She said I owed her for all the years she spent putting up with me, and that it was only fair to give back now that I had extra money. It was insane. When I kept ignoring her, she upped the ante. One morning, I opened my front door and found a legal notice waiting for me. Ashley was suing me, claiming I'd hidden assets during the divorce, specifically the GoFundMe money, and that I was in contempt of our settlement. She wanted half of it, even though the fundraiser happened after the divorce was finalized. I felt sick. Like, actually nauseous? Wasn't it enough that I was battling cancer and barely making ends meet? Now I had to deal with this nonsense too? I called my lawyer, the same guy who helped me during the divorce. When I told him what was going on, he actually laughed. "She's lost it," he said. "There's no way she has a case." Still, I was stressed. Even if her claims were ridiculous, the thought of going back to court made me anxious. I was already stretched thin, emotionally and physically. My hair was falling out from chemo. I was constantly exhausted, and now I had to fight off Ashley's ridiculous lawsuit. But I wasn't about to let her bully me into giving her what she wanted. Not this time. My lawyer and I started preparing for the hearing. We gathered every piece of evidence we could. Medical bills, documentation from the GoFundMe page, proof that the fundraiser happened months after the divorce was finalized. We even got statements from some of the donors who knew me personally. Meanwhile, Ashley kept trying to rally support. She even dragged her new husband and her parents into it, telling anyone who'd listen that I was hoarding money while she was struggling to provide for Lily. It was laughable. Everyone in our community knew the truth. They'd seen the fundraiser, read the updates, and knew how much I was fighting to stay alive. Ashley's sob story didn't hold much weight, but that didn't stop her from trying. But here's the thing. Ashley underestimated just how much the community was behind me. The judge assigned to our case actually recognized my name from the GoFundMe. Turns out he donated anonymously and remembered my story. That little detail ended up making a huge difference. On the day of the hearing, I sat nervously at the defendant's table. Ashley waltzed in, her new husband trailing behind her, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Her lawyer was the picture of arrogance, and I was already bracing for the worst. As the hearing began, Ashley's lawyer launched into his opening argument, claiming I'd misrepresented my finances during the divorce. "Your Honor," he said, "my client has reason to believe the defendant concealed significant assets during their divorce proceedings, assets that could have been used to support their child, and by extension, the family." He then gestured toward Ashley, with what I'm sure he thought was a sympathetic smile. This is a mother simply trying to provide for her child. My lawyer didn't even flinch. When the judge asked for specifics, Ashley's lawyer doubled down, referencing the GoFundMe page. "The fundraiser," he said, "is evidence of premeditation. It's clear the defendant anticipated this financial windfall and kept it hidden to avoid fair division during the settlement." The judge was looking skeptical. "You're claiming he planned to get cancer to raise money for treatment?" he asked, his tone neutral, but his expression anything but. There was an awkward silence. Ashley's lawyer stumbled over his words. Not exactly, Your Honor, but..." The judge cut him off. "Let's move on. What proof do you have that these funds were hidden assets?" But then Ashley herself jumped in, clearly frustrated. "He's using Lily to get sympathy," she snapped. "He mentioned her in the fundraiser. That means the money is for the family, not just him." The judge's eyebrows shot up. "So you're saying," he began, "that donations made specifically to cover cancer treatments should be considered marital property? Because your ex-husband mentioned your daughter?" Ashley nodded, arms crossed like she was certain she'd just made the winning argument. That's when she brought up the sports car. "And honestly," she added, "it's not just about me. My stepson deserves something too. He's been dreaming of a sports car for years." The room fell silent for a moment, and then a muffled laugh broke the tension. Someone in the back of the courtroom actually snorted, and I couldn't blame them. "Let me clarify," the judge said. "Are you suggesting that donations meant to cover life-saving medical treatment should be redirected to purchase a luxury vehicle for your new spouse's child?" Ashley stammered, clearly caught off guard. I'm just saying, family comes first. And he's been getting so much sympathy, it's not fair." My lawyer, still calm, turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is exactly the type of frivolous and exploitative behavior we've been dealing with," he said. "Every piece of evidence, from the timeline to the donation records, proves this money was raised after the divorce, and for a singular purpose: my client's survival. To suggest otherwise is not only baseless, but offensive to everyone who donated in good faith." By the time my lawyer finished, the judge was visibly unimpressed with Aseli's case. He turned to her lawyer. "Do you have any concrete evidence to support these claims? Or are we done here?" They didn't have anything to add. Then, after weeks of stressing, the day of the verdict finally came. I barely slept the night before. Chemo had been kicking my ass. And on top of that, I kept replaying all the possible outcomes in my head. What if the judge actually bought Ashley's nonsense? What if I lost the money that was literally keeping me alive? By the time I got to the courthouse, I was running on fumes. Ashley, on the other hand, walked in like she owned the place. She had her new husband with her, dressed to the nines, and she kept giving me these smug little glances, like she already knew she'd won. I avoided eye contact because honestly, I wasn't in the mood to deal with her theatrics. My lawyer, though, he was calm as ever. Trust me, he said. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. The judge wasted no time getting started. He recapped the situation. Ashley was suing me for half of the GoFundMe donations, claiming they were hidden assets from the divorce. My lawyer immediately pointed out that the timeline didn't add up. The divorce had been finalized months before the fundraiser even started. He presented the GoFundMe page, complete with timestamps, and read a few of the comments from donors, who explicitly said the money was for my treatment. Ashley's lawyer tried to argue that the donations should still count as shared assets because they were based on my sob story, which she claimed included our daughter. According to them, since Lily was part of my story, Ashley was entitled to a cut. It was a ridiculous argument, but they really leaned into it. That's when the judge spoke up. So you're saying, he said, that donations made specifically for cancer treatment should be treated as marital property because the defendant mentioned his daughter? His tone was calm, but you could tell he wasn't buying it. Ashley, of course, couldn't help herself. She jumped in saying, he's using Lily to get sympathy. If he has that much money, he should be helping his family, not hoarding it for himself. I could feel my blood boiling, but I kept my mouth shut. My lawyer handled it perfectly. He calmly explained how every cent of the donations had gone, or was planned to go, toward medical bills, medications, and other treatment-related expenses. He even presented a breakdown of my insurance coverage, showing the massive gaps I still had to pay out of pocket. The judge looked at the paperwork, then turned back to Ashley. Do you have any proof, he asked, that these funds were hidden or improperly obtained during the marriage? She launched into this emotional spiel about how hard her life had been since the divorce. She talked about raising Lily alone, which was laughable since she'd taken most of our savings and remarried a guy with money, and how her stepson had been dreaming of a sports car for years. She actually said, it's not just about me, it's about the kids. The judge's expression was pure disbelief. Are you seriously suggesting, he said, that your stepson's desire for a sports car outweighs the defendant's need for life-saving medical treatment? Ashley tried to backtrack, mumbling something about family priorities, but the damage was done. The judge wasn't having any of it. He asked her lawyer if they had any solid evidence to support their claims, but they didn't. Then it was my turn to speak. The judge asked me to explain how the fundraiser came about and what the money was being used for. I told him about my co-workers, my friends, and how the community had come together to help me when I was at my lowest. I explained how the donations had literally saved my life, allowing me to afford chemo and stay afloat while paying child support. I was trying to keep it together, but I could feel my voice shaking. The whole courtroom was quiet as I finished. Even the judge looked a little emotional. Thank you for sharing, he said. It's clear that these funds were given in good faith for a specific purpose. When it was time for the ruling, I was holding my breath. The judge didn't drag it out. He dismissed Ashley's motion with prejudice, meaning she couldn't bring up the same nonsense again. He stated that the GoFundMe money was not marital property, that it had been donated specifically for my medical treatment, and that Ashley had no claim to it whatsoever. But that wasn't all. The judge went a step further and ordered Ashley to pay my legal fees, citing her frivolous and exploitative attempt to seize funds intended for life-saving care. He also reduced my child support payments, acknowledging my medical condition and financial strain. When he announced the reduced payments, Ashley's face turned bright red. That's not fair, she shouted. I'm raising his daughter. The judge stayed calm and reminded her that she'd taken the majority of our savings in the divorce, and that my income was now severely limited. He wasn't buying her act, and it was glorious. By the time the hearing ended, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Ashley stormed out of the courtroom, dragging her husband behind her. He looked more embarrassed than anything, like he couldn't believe he'd hitched his wagon to someone so entitled. That day was a turning point for me. The donations were safe, the child support was manageable, and Ashley's ridiculous claims had been shut down. My lawyer patted me on the back as we left the courthouse. You deserve that win, he said, and for once, I actually believed. You'd think after getting shut down so hard in court, Ashley would take the L and move on. But nah, that's not how she operates. If there's one thing I've learned about her over the years, it's that she doesn't know how to quit, even when she's dead wrong. It started with her blowing up my phone. I got texts, voicemails, you name it. At first, it was the same old stuff. You're selfish. You're ruining Lily's life. I can't believe you'd put yourself over your own family. I ignored her because, honestly, I was done wasting energy on her nonsense. But then she started twisting the narrative. She went full PR mode, telling anyone who would listen that I was hoarding money and refusing to help our daughter. She conveniently left out the part where the judge ruled in my favor and the money was strictly for my medical bills. I heard through the grapevine that she'd been telling her new husband's family I was some deadbeat dad who couldn't even pay child support on time. The funny thing? Everyone saw right through her. Our town isn't huge, and word travels fast. People knew about the fundraiser and why the money was raised. They knew about the court case too. Ashley tried to rally sympathy, but most people just saw her for what she was, greedy and entitled. But she didn't stop there. Oh no. She started trying to manipulate Lily. Now let me say this. I've always tried to keep Lily out of the drama. She's only 6, and she doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of her mom's nonsense. But Ashley didn't seem to care. She started telling Lily things like, Daddy doesn't want to help us anymore, and Daddy only cares about his money. I know this because Lily started asking me questions during our visits. Stuff like, do you not want to help Mommy and me anymore? Hearing that broke me. I sat her down and explained as best as I could that I was doing everything I could to take care of her. I told her that even though Mommy and Daddy don't live together anymore, we both love her very much. I didn't badmouth Ashley, tempting as it was, because I didn't want to confuse Lily or make her feel torn between us. But it killed me that Ashley was using her like that. Around this time, I started seeing small signs that Ashley's perfect new life wasn't as perfect as she wanted people to think. Her new husband, the rich guy she married right after the divorce, turns out he wasn't as loaded as she made him out to be. From what I heard, his business wasn't doing so great, and money was tight. Suddenly, Ashley's demands for more money started to make a lot more sense. She even sent me a long, rambling email at one point, saying she'd forgive me if I'd reconsider giving her some of the fundraiser money. She threw in every guilt trip in the book. Lily deserves a stable home. You have no idea how hard it is to raise a child on my own. And even, I only asked for the car because my stepson deserves a good life too. I didn't respond. What was there to say? But one afternoon, I was at home recovering from a particularly rough chemo session when there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I dragged myself to the door. And who do I see standing there? Ashley. She looked annoyed, like I was the one inconveniencing her. Before I could even say hello, she started going off about how unfair everything was. You've got this house, you've got all this money from the fundraiser, and I'm stuck trying to make ends meet, she said. How can you be so heartless? I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. Heartless? I said. You left me when I was at my lowest, took everything we had, and now you're blaming me because your new life isn't working out the way you wanted? She didn't like that. She started yelling, saying I wasn't being a good co-parent, and that I was setting a bad example for Lily. I tried to keep my cool, but the stress of everything, the cancer, the court case, the constant harassment, just got to me. Ashley, I said, staring her in the eye, this money is keeping me alive. I'm fighting to stay here for Lily, to be her dad. And you're standing here demanding I give it to you for a sports car? Do you even hear yourself? That shut her up for a second. Then she muttered something about how she was done with me and stormed off. I watched her get into her car and drive away, and for the first time, I actually felt sorry for her. Not because she deserved sympathy, she didn't, but because it was clear she was never going to be happy. No amount of money or things would ever be enough for her. And that's where things stand right now. I know my life's a lot to handle at the moment, but I'm doing my best to hold my ground. If anything new comes up, I'll be sure to keep you guys updated. Final update. Hey everyone! I was binge reading all your comments in the past few days, and I really appreciate your compassion and support. It means a lot. Here's the update you've been waiting for. Better late than never. So, after Ashley's little doorbell drama, I half expected her to pull another stunt, but to my surprise, she finally backed off. Maybe she realized she wasn't getting anywhere, or maybe her new life was too much of a mess for her to keep bothering me. Either way, the silence was golden. I finally felt like I could focus on myself and what mattered. Getting through my treatments and being there for Lily. The donations from the GoFundMe covered a huge chunk of my medical expenses, which was a massive weight off my shoulders. Between chemo, medications, and the extra costs that insurance didn't cover, I would have been buried without that money. Every time I sat in the chemo chair, I thought about the people who had my back. My coworkers, friends, neighbors, even strangers who donated or shared my story. It reminded me I wasn't fighting alone, even if it felt like it sometimes. Lily is my biggest motivation to keep going. She doesn't fully understand what happened, but she knows Daddy doesn't feel well and needs to go to the doctor a lot. I make sure our visits are special, even if I don't have the energy to do much. As for Ashley, she struggles to pay the legal fees the judge had ordered her to cover. Karma, I guess. She'd tried to take me to court thinking she'd walk away with a payday, but instead, she ended up with more bills. The cherry on top? The child support reduction hit her hard. She has been so used to that steady $1,200 every month, and now that it was cut down significantly, she has to tighten her belt. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little satisfaction over that. The whole court fiasco became a bit of small-town gossip. People couldn't believe Ashley tried to take my cancer fundraiser money for a sports car. I heard a few people jokingly refer to her as Sports Car Ashley. I didn't spread it around, but I won't lie. I didn't correct anyone either. She dug her own grave, and now she has to deal with it. But as much as I wanted to bask in the victory, I didn't have the energy to hold on to bitterness. Cancer has a way of putting things in perspective. I am too focused on surviving and being there for Lily to waste time worrying about Ashley and her choices. She'd already taken so much from me. I am not going to let her take any more headspace. Lately, my treatments are starting to show results. It's not easy. Chemo is brutal, and there are days I feel like giving up. But every time I look at Lily's picture on my nightstand, I find the strength to keep going. Slowly, I am starting to feel a little better. My doctors are cautiously optimistic, which is the first good news I heard in a long time. My coworkers and friends stayed supportive throughout the whole ordeal. They didn't just raise money for me, they checked in regularly, dropped off meals, and even helped with house repairs when I was too sick to do them myself. Their kindness is keeping me grounded. It's funny how people you never expected to step up can surprise you in the best way. As for Lily, I made a promise to myself to protect her from all the drama. She's just a kid. She doesn't need to know the details of what went down between her mom and me. I don't want her to feel torn or confused, so I am focusing on making our time together as normal and happy as possible. I want her to see me as her dad, not a sick person. Ashley and I still have to communicate about Lily, but I keep it strictly about her needs. When she tries to bring up anything else, like money or her latest sob story, I shut it down immediately. I honestly don't have the energy for her games anymore, and she seems to get the message. Maybe losing in court knocked some sense into her, or maybe she's just too embarrassed to keep pushing. Either way, she stays out of my business, and I am happy to keep it that way. And guess what, guys? I just finished my last round of chemo. It feels surreal. I still have a long road ahead, but knowing I have made it through the hardest part gives me hope. My doctor said my prognosis was improving, and I'm finally starting to think about the future. Not just surviving, but actually living. Looking back, the whole ordeal with Ashley showed me who was really in my corner and who wasn't. It taught me to stand up for myself, even when I felt like I had nothing left to give. And most importantly, it reminded me how much I have to fight for. Lily, my friends, and my own damn life. I'm still here, still standing, and still pushing forward. And that, my friends, is something no one, not cancer, not anyone, can take away from me. Thanks for sticking until the end. Wish me luck.